Okay, so this is chapter 11. I decided we're going to do the intelligence testing stuff in class. So I'm halfway through chapter 11 here. So big things happening during middle childhood. So one of the changes that's happening cognitively is an increase in what we call metalinguistic awareness. And this is the child's ability to essentially reflect on their own language. So because of this, children become much better during this stage in middle childhood in correcting themselves. So correcting the grammar, the mistakes that they make in speaking and writing, they become much better and they rely less on adults to do that for them. The other exciting thing that happens here also is that children start to understand puns. They start to understand that words can have two different meanings and that can make a joke, right? So during this particular stage, if you've been around children in this stage, they love to tell jokes, especially like the dad jokes, right? The corny kinds of jokes, knock knock jokes, those kinds of things. Children in this stage, they love it because they are just starting to understand basically the way that you can play around with language. Other things happening here, their receptive vocabulary increases. So remember, that's the words that they can understand. So at age 6, they understand about 14,000 words, age 11, 40,000, and by age 14, about 80,000 words. Children in this stage also become much, much better at constructing a narrative. So creating a story that has some kind of logical beginning, middle, and end. So they become much, much better at that. All right, so let's talk then about English language learners. So English language learners, or ELL students, are students who they need help with learning English. This is about 9% of our current school population. Spanish is the most common language that is spoken other than English, of course, and Chinese actually is the second most common. So there are a couple of different approaches to teaching English to English language learners. So the first one here is English as a second language, so ESL. This is typically done entirely in English. So students don't really understand, right, English, but the instruction is entirely done in English for the ESL programs. The second is the bilingual education approach, where you start in the child's native language and you do a gradual transition to English. So for this particular idea here, the bilingual programs are oftentimes much more effective. So research supports use of bilingual programs. However, they also tend to be much more expensive compared to the ESL programs. So oftentimes you will see in school systems that ESL programs are used because they're less expensive and also because they can support many different languages at one time. So a more efficient use of resources. So even in these kinds of immersion programs that students are experiencing, it can take between 4 and 7 years for children to become proficient in their new language. So it takes a long time, right? I mean, this is something that even though the child's brain is so plastic and so receptive to a new language, it still does take quite a while for children to become proficient in English. All right, so let's talk then about development of literacy. So we've got 5 different stages here. So stage 0, emergent literacy, we talked about that in the previous cognitive development chapter, chapter 8. In stage 1, let's talk about what's happening in the formal literacy. So in this particular stage, formal literacy instruction, the child is basically getting instruction in phonological awareness. So they start to become aware of the sounds that letters make, the sounds that combinations of letters make, phonological decoding, so assigning sounds to particular letters, and also having those sight words. So these are words that children, they don't have to sound them out. They can just look at it. So that's the sight piece. I can look at it and I know exactly what the word is. So stages 1 and 2 actually focus on those those 3 different skills. So that phonological awareness, phonological decoding, and then also the sight words. In stage 3, we're moving into reading comprehension. So with this particular one, the child is creating a mental model of the events, the ideas that are in the text, and then using these language functions like processing speed, working memory, knowledge of vocabulary, knowledge of grammar, to be able to really understand or comprehend what they are reading. And then, of course, in stage 4, the child is being able to read more widely, right? So being able to read at a level that is functional and a level that is fluent. All right, so let's talk about how do we teach children how to read? So there are two different types of kind of competing approaches here. The whole language approach. So with whole language, we focus on the basic assumption is that children learn how to read naturally. And if we use books that children enjoy, stuff that they will find interesting, they will just kind of naturally pick it up. So using meaningful text, using books that children like will spark their interest, and then they will learn how to read based on that. Now, the other side is what's called a phonics approach. So phonics, remember this prefix phon, refers to sound, right? So with sound in the phonics approach, we are teaching children the sounds of letters, the sounds of letter combinations, so that they have those decoding skills, so that they can look at a word and match the sounds to the letters and sound it out, right? So that they can break down that word and really understand. So in the phonics approach, then, there is a lot of focus on letters, on sounds, pattern recognition. So the letter CH in English sound ch, right? So if you were doing a phonics approach, you would work with children on sounding that out, that ch sound, CH, ch. You also would be doing a lot of kind of rote memorization, worksheets and things of that nature. So in terms of kind of how these work, oftentimes you will see in a school system that most educators use both, okay? So they're not just going to use typically one over the other. Oftentimes they will use a combination of both of these things. All right, let's talk about math. All right, so math development. So children are growing in this area as well, and we see 3 primary areas where they are really developing here with math knowledge. So the first one here, this conceptual knowledge, they start to understand complex numbers, place value, right? They start to understand fractions also, so more complex mathematical operations. Arithmetic operations, this refers to the ability to solve complex problems. So think about like word problems, for example, the kind of basic add, plus, subtract, divide, long division, if you remember learning that in maybe 3rd grade. And then, of course, problem solving, which typically requires some degree of reading comprehension, especially for things like word problems. So being able to read it and then pick out the relevant information from there. So that's reading comprehension, but also conceptual understanding. This video here, and I'll post the link for this, but this video here essentially showcases some of the efforts that are being made to engage children in what we call STEM fields. So science, technology, engineering, and math. So if you've ever looked at projections for where the jobs of the future are going to be, that's it, right? So in the STEM fields, there is a real push nationwide to get children, and in particular to get girls, so to get young girls interested in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We typically find, if we look at undergraduate enrollment in STEM majors, oftentimes male students outnumber female students. If we look at graduate degrees, it's an even lower number of females who are earning graduate degrees in STEM fields. The one exception is biology. So in biology, we have more women than we do men, but in all of the other STEM fields, so think like physics, calculus, chemistry, all of those classes, engineering, for example. So in all of those areas, males typically outnumber females. So there is a real push to encourage young girls in particular to get involved in the STEM fields. All right, that is all. I will see you next week.